What's happening, Nerd Squad, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. Nowadays, it feels like every other movie or show that's announced is a superhero story in some way. I mean, Disney announced like 30 original Disney Plus shows, and half of them are just Marvel alone. It's gonna be kind of a headache, but it'll be a good time. Mostly. It's a lot. And while it's hard to keep track of current storylines and who's part of what and who isn't, it's even harder to keep track of these superhero movies that get announced and then never come out. They just don't make it to the big screen. And some of these movies, I'm not gonna lie, they sound like a 90s kid's dream come true. Without further ado, I'm Taylor McWatters, and here are the top 10 canceled superhero movies. Let's count them down. Number 10, Superman Lives. Okay, Warner Brothers and DC recently announced that a new Superman is on the way. J.J. Abrams is on board as a producer, and Warner Brothers is centering the film around a black Superman, and Zack Snyder calls it bold and long overdue. Now, Warner Brothers actually once went an entirely different route back in 1997. This was back when they brought Tim Burton again to do another movie. They were supposed to do a Superman Lives film. When they brought Tim Burton back, this time to do Superman Lives. Now, Burton at this point had made Batman in the late 80s, so when Kevin Smith had this script ready to go, Nicolas Cage was on board to play the Man of Steel, which would have been, I mean, I don't know, would it have been good? Probably. They were initially going to follow the death of Superman storyline, and the cast sounds pretty sweet besides just Nick Cage. We would have had Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor, Courtney Cox was set to play Lois Lane, which would have been actually really good. Chris Rock as Jimmy Olsen, would have killed it. This movie sounds like a weird dream, I don't know. It was canceled because Warner Brothers lacked the confidence or budget. I mean, look at these guys. Now, around the same time, they had TV shows that were also getting pulled, so that budget was looking more and more spooky. Now, Tim Burton also went the spooky route after this and did Sleepy Hollow instead. You can't really complain there. That's a classic. It sounds cool. Probably would have been a weird movie, but probably would have made millions of dollars. And before we continue on with this list of canceled superhero movies, if you guys want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. Not this one. We don't like that one. We like this one a lot more. Definitely a lot more. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's get right back to the list. Number 9, Gambit. Channing Tatum was eyed to play Gambit way back in 2007. Now, originally, he was supposed to be an X-Men Origins Wolverine, and there was some other stuff coming with that as well, but I'll get into that later on. Now, this was supposed to come out in 2009, but nothing happened with the solo flick until like 2013. It was just on hold. Channing Tatum finally spoke out and said that he would crush the role of Gambit. He's from New Orleans, Gambit's his favorite character, and he wanted to do it for realsies. So January 2014, X-Men franchise producer Lauren Schuler Donner announced that she'd begun planning for a solo flick with Channing Tatum on board. Not a big movie, just about a thief in New Orleans. Just a nice, subtle origin story. She was waiting for the studio to be on board, but now come May 2014, Channing signed on officially, and his character would have been introduced in X-Men Apocalypse 2016. They got a writer, they got a director, they had everything ready to go, and then come 2015, Fox decided they wanted to be bigger since Hugh Jackman was leaving his role as Wolverine. So they needed this new popular dude now to be the center of the franchise. And the budget was higher now. Now we had a $150 million budget, and Channing was on the verge of quitting because it was too large of a commitment to make. Would have been multiple movies, obviously. New directors were coming and going all these years. It got so close and then it didn't happen. We've been kind of toyed around this whole time until finally, back in 2019, it was officially canceled. It was so close, and then Disney got Fox properties, and that was just the nail in the coffin. Number 8, Spider-Man 4. This one I would sell my soul for. I would see this movie, I would watch it every day if it came out. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4. Okay, look at this. Look at what we almost got. We almost got Vulture, we almost got Mysterio. I mean, sure, we got these things, but in a much different way, and way later also. When Spider-Man 3 was about to be released in 2007, you know, when we thought it was gonna be a better movie than it was, fair for me to say, Sam Raimi wasn't entirely thrilled about Spider-Man 3 at this point. He felt like it was too much for one movie, and he was actually planning on using the 4th movie to land the plane in a much better way. But even doing so, he still planned on bringing in Vulture, which was going to be played by John Malkovich. John Malkovich almost played the Vulture. Could you imagine how different that would be? Felicia Hardy was set to become Vulturess, and actually Anne Hathaway was once on board, and she probably would have killed that role as well. Now, the story was much harder to work out than he thought, so the film never really got off the ground in time. Now, with Sam directing the next Doctor Strange movie, I'm sure we're in for a huge treat in some way. Number 7, The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Speaking of Sony and people parting ways, we gotta mention this one. June 2013, we got told a 3rd Amazing Spider-Man film was on the way. And while some weren't already thrilled to begin with, the movies were definitely going a direction. It had its story that it was playing out, and fans that were liking it wanted to see the rest. I was one of them. Amazing Spider-Man 2 was fine. It wasn't that bad. The Rhino sucked. Everything else was Sony planned on doing Amazing Spider-Man 4 as well, so both of them would come out in 2016 and 2018, and it would have looked a lot different for the webhead. So Sony felt pressure from the MCU, so they wanted to expand its own universe during these sequels. So in 2013, they announced Venom, which would be written by Alex Kurtzman, and Sinister Six, written by Drew Goddard. So this Sony leak, this was a big deal. This is what changed a lot of the Spider-Man game. This is when it all went to hell, basically. So Sony got hacked by the Guardians of Peace, and they demanded that they don't show the movie The Interview on any screens. Remember that whole thing back in 2014? So the leaks that got out contained private emails, conversations on salaries, a lot of top secret Sony shit. Like Sony co-chair Amy Pascal wrote in an email that she thinks Idris Elba should be the next Bond. That's good stuff. Kanye was also set to be part of Yeezus Productions. Not good stuff. The biggest leak was that Marvel wanted Spider-Man in its third Captain America movie, and then the internet just took over the rest. That was a good time. Now cut to 2021, we're getting most of these things all in one movie, basically. Spider-Man No Way Home. Alfred Molina doesn't even give a damn. He's like, yeah, we tried to keep it a secret, but hey, the internet. And then he just confirmed that his version of Doc Ock is returning in the same story. It's gonna be huge multiverse stuff. Number 6, Superman Flyby. So after Kevin Smith's script was scrapped for that Tim Burton, Nick Cage Superman movie, J.J. Abrams tried to get a Superman movie off the ground himself. Now this was way before he was disappointing Star Wars fans, and before Lost even. In 2002, he pitched the first draft titled Superman, and it was eventually in pre-production with the title Superman Flyby. Now we would have seen Clark as a college senior while he would meet a feisty Lois Lane at a frat party, with the early scenes on Krypton going as far as the actors speaking Kryptonian, with Abrams creating an entirely new language like Elvish or Klingon. Now, in a leaked draft of the script, it's also revealed that Lex Luthor would have been an agent in the CIA, who's a rather fun, well-written character who chases down UFOs and stuff like that. It was supposed to set up a trilogy, and the kicker at the end of Superman Flyby was that Lex Luthor is actually a Kryptonian sleeper agent, so it turned into another evil Superman. It would have been fine. Oh, and in that one first movie, Superman would have died and then come back to life in a matter of like 30 pages. It was too much. Number 5, X-Men Origins Magneto. Long before the MCU was a cash cow, the X-Men movies were actually the big blockbuster team-up movies. Fans were loving it. So they planned on releasing Origins to both Wolverine and Magneto. You know, get their side hustle on. So Fox got Sheldon Turner to write the script in 2004, and then 3 years later, David S. Goyer was attached to direct. Now, X-Men Origins Magneto, of course, would have been an origin story, so we would have had it focus a lot on Magneto's time during the Holocaust, and they wanted the story to be him tracking down those soldiers who tortured him and took his parents. Now, over time, the story started to change. Eventually, it was centered around Magneto and young Professor X fighting in the early 60s, and by the time they were done figuring it out come 2009, Fox was already developing X-Men First Class anyways, which was gonna hit a lot of the same marks X-Men Origins Magneto was planning to in either of the directions they chose. So they ultimately decided just to use X-Men First Class as a soft reboot and put everything all in one. And to this day, it's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. One of those spin-offs would have been James Franco even to play James Madrox, Multiple Man. But due to the multiple allegations against him, the last thing we want is more James Francos running around, so that's a no-go. Number 4, Batman Year One. Long before Joaquin Phoenix got an Oscar for his work on Joker, in the early 2000s, he almost suited up as the Caped Crusader instead. See, Warner Brothers wanted to do a live-action Batman Beyond and a Batman Year One movie. They got Darren Aronofsky on board to direct, which is a pretty big deal, and we would have seen Bruce Wayne not only lose his parents, but also he would have lost his fortune. So now this Bruce Wayne is set to become a criminal, and it would have felt like a 70s thriller apparently. And the craziest part of this film is that the studio wasn't even eyeing Joaquin to play Bruce. That was actually Darren pushing them for Joaquin's casting. The studio initially wanted Freddie Prinze Jr. to play this Batman. I mean, who else do we really have? If you could cast any Batman in the early 2000s, who would you cast and why? Let us know in the comments, we're curious. Number 3, Justice League Mortal. When it comes to Justice League movies, never say never. I mean, clearly Twitter works. Clearly. If only we bombarded Twitter back then in 2007, we could have seen Adam Brody as the Flash, but we didn't because Twitter was new and we didn't know how to work it yet. So Justice League Mortal was set to be loosely based off the Tower of Babel storyline from 2000, as well as Superman Sacrifice from 2006. George Miller was signed on to direct in September 2007, but the writer's strike made it difficult to get off the ground. That same writer's strike that was responsible for Transformers 2. What a disappointment that was, oh my god. And the other 4 movies afterwards. The studio wasn't quite happy with the script yet, and because of the strike, they couldn't really get it to where it wanted to be. They just looked at this awful script for years and they're like, Anybody? Someone? So January 2008, it was officially put on hold, and George Miller originally wanted Adam Brody as the Flash, but the rest of the cast was wild. He wanted DJ Katrona as Superman, the rapper Common as Green Lantern, so sick, Megan Gale as Wonder Woman, Armie Hammer as Bruce Wayne, and Santiago Cabrera as Aquaman. And then Hugh Keys-Byrne also would have been in here as Martian Manhunter, with Teresa Palmer starring as Talia al Ghul. Jessica Biel actually turned down the role of Wonder Woman way back when this was kicking off. I can't tell if that's a good choice or a bad choice. The script anyways was leaked online in October 2013, so I don't think a release the Miller cut trend would work. Although we could try. Number 2, the Fantastic Four 2. This one's not that shocking, but I have to mention it, okay? This is why you don't announce sequels before the first movie is released. It's bad juju. James Cameron said there's 5 Avatar movies coming, and I'm gonna be 30 by the time the trailer for number 2 comes out. Like, don't announce things. We don't know what to do. We're just sitting here. So director Josh Trank felt like his movie was an original take on Marvel's first family, and the first teaser looked kind of sick. I was pretty hooked. But like we've seen with Warner Brothers before, Fox was pushing for an entirely different vision. What does the director know anyways about their vision? Stupid. So the final product, Josh Trank didn't even like because the studio just curbed it so much. But even though it bombed, a sequel was still underway come September 2015. They were still talking about it. Now eventually Simon Kinberg was attached to the project, and Tommy Wiseau even spoke up about wanting to direct it at one point, which would have been so good, actually. It would have been so good. Could you imagine? All the Oscars. Here you go. The film was removed from Fox's lineup, and Toby Kebbell, who played Dr. Doom, said publicly that he is not planning on returning to do a sequel. I can't imagine why. So come 2019, nobody can figure this thing out yet, so the MCU will now bring Fantastic Four back to them into phase 4, with John Watts directing this time around. I think it'll be a little bit better. And finally, number 1, speaking of James Cameron's SpiderMan. Before he decided to spend his entire life on the Avatar movies, James Cameron wanted to give the web slinger a shot. He wanted to do it back in the mid-90s. There was a full script and a cast just ready to go. This was right after he made T2, okay? So he was popping. Everything was great at this point. He had Arnold Schwarzenegger on as Dr. Octopus, so naturally he wanted Edward Furlong as Spider-Man. No, this wouldn't have worked. I'm just gonna say this would not have worked. Drew Barrymore would have completed this 90s image as Gwen Stacy, and Katharine Hepburn was in talks to play Aunt May. Those two would have worked. The other two, no way. Lance Henriksen was also eyed to be the Green Goblin, and they were planning on following the night Gwen Stacy died storyline. Now the production company, Carloco, went bankrupt and Cameron wasn't quite as rich yet, so the movie was ultimately scrapped. His next passion project was about this ship that sank in 1912, I don't know. Made a little bit of money, and maybe it bombed, I don't know, didn't watch it. Guys, there you have it. Those are just 10 superhero movies that were canceled. There have been so many more, so let us know in the comments which other ones we should include, and maybe we'll throw them in a cheeky part 2. Until next time, I've been your host, Taylor McWatters. Thanks for joining us on Top 10 Nerd. Peace.